It's time for Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast from the Spacebook for the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hadley, Birmingham's king of the geeks, and your designated driver. Now, it could be you're new to the show. Geronimo, good choice, you. But it's just as likely you've been aboard before. Well, whichever. With a guaranteed free-speaking, big-thinking, eclectic and eccentric show for everyone. Decade or century you started watching, reading, or listening along to the ongoing adventures of our hero, Doctor Who. We talk about it all on this show. All views are encouraged, and there's even time and space for a few laughs along the way. So come and step into our TARDIS and share this journey together here with us on Type 40. Welcome back to Type 40. And if you've got a nose as big as, say, a carrionite, for example, you'll be loving the fact that this is another one of our discussions of discovery here on Type 40 with the assistance of our frequently asked questions about time travellers. We're going to have a poke and a prod, a ramble and a roam through the mental pathways of a fellow Doctor Who fan. Oh, wait until they get a load of this, eh? And if you've ever sat and wondered about the simpler things in the average Doctor Who fan's life, as I think we all have, does everybody feel the same way as I do, or am I the outlier? This is the strand, this is the show for you. Okay, what have we got first? Yeah, the idea is that when we do this, when we think back on our own connections with this show, sometimes I think, particularly when you've been into it for a number of years or even decades, there are things about it that can build up, and we can sort of commit them to our own history, and they can gather dust, can't they? Well, this is our way of rattling the drawers and kicking up that dust with a friend and a fellow fan. This time I'm delighted to welcome aboard one of the very first guests. Welcome back aboard, I should say. One of the very first guests we ever had on Type 40, way back on episode 24, believe it or not, when we talked at length about the adventures or the misadventures of River Song. So that went on for quite a while. We've spoken quite a lot in the time in between, but he's never been able to make it back on the show. Thought the frequently asked questions were the perfect frame to tempt him in with. Okay, it's time to put it right as I welcome back to Type 40, Mr. Christian Basel.
I know, right? That Hadley bloke is taking forever. He just keeps blah, 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 and that UK time frame must be third. Oh, sorry. Sorry. My bad.
Time flies, Christian. Time flies.
Sorry. I was in the waiting room for way too long. I am so sorry. How you doing?
You know better than I do how time flies when you ramble on.
I know. Welcome to Doctor Who podcasting. Noel and the Rabbi Andy and everybody over at the Doctor Who chat, they all know.
It's everybody. A big fandom, isn't it?
We've got a big family
fans out there creating and mouthing off. You've done more talking than most, though, haven't you, on your show? How many episodes of The Legend of the Travelling TARDIS have there been out now?
Really? Here's the thing, and I guess we can go into the background. We've only gotten to about 150. It's not my first podcasts I've been on. I've been on other podcasts. I've been helping out with other podcasts. I've been a guest on other podcasts. But for us, I think we're up to 153. Where are you at? You're at 200, right?
It's not your first rodeo, is it? We are, somewhere in the early 100s. Well, I don't know, because we record these out of sync, so I'm not exactly sure where this is going to land. But we are well over 100
now.
Yeah,
I've had those moments where it's like, I've had those moments because our friends over at the Hanging with Web show, they take care of our audios. So there's nothing to barometer as far as like YouTube and Facebook. You have to go up there and count how many episodes you had. So I have to go over to the iHeart channel or one of our audios and count, how many. I'm like,
that's it. Turn some dials, flick some switches, push some buttons, bang some hammers.
So I used to go, oh, yeah, this is our first episode. Oh, yeah, we're up to episode 10. Now I just shut up because I don't even know where that's going to fall. I could be 4 episodes ahead and I wouldn't even know it yet. But yeah, that's one of the things about Doctor Who podcasts is ever see a Whovian who is a podcaster, ask him this question and be prepared to sit in a room for 3 hours. What is Doctor Who?
He had a go at me for rambling earlier on, everybody. This is going to be
I know.
the most verbose show we have ever put out.
I was just talking to a friend.
So hold tight. But the thing is with this, though, Christian, that even you, as much talking as you've done to all those people that you've met, and you have met just about everybody, there are still, believe it or not, there are still a few pesky little gaps in your data extract. They've got the little stars next to them, you see. It's very, very curious, and they need filling in. We're going to attempt to do all of that to keep the Time Lords off your back, off your case with Type 40's to frequently
I don't want to see my
questions.
mug either, so I know what you're talking about. That's fine. Put the pictures up there.
But you can relax. Don't stress. You are amongst fellow companions and fans. There are no wrong answers, and no one is on trial, Christian. That's what you got to remember as we go forward.
Well, that takes the fun out of it, especially if you're going to put Michael Jason in the same episode that I'm in. And fine, that's a plus.
So that's all coming up. But if you'd like to do some real-time traveling of your own, each and every edition. Let's try that again. Each and every edition of this show, past, present, and future, is just a tap or two away on the device of your choice. If you know where to look. There's dozens of great conversations, reviews, previews, interviews, geek outs, and deep dives with all our regular panelists. We know there's something for every fan at type40.podbean.com. There'll be more about all of that a little later on, as well as a couple of minutes where we make contact with the matrix of all knowledge that we call the Fandom Podcast Network for a word about all the other cult conversations that are going on all the other shows over there.
And if I was going to add, Dan, if I could add on to this, any of the Doctor Who podcasts out there, the indie, when I'm talking about Doctor Who podcasts, I'm talking about the indie, just like Dan, just like myself, just like the Rabbi.
I think we're all indies, aren't we?
Yeah, we're all indies, but support all of them. Go out there, not only just hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, comment on your favorite episodes, like your favorite episodes, because the more that we get a voice out there, the more that we grow and get our voices out there, so we can help support get your voice out to where it needs to be as far as the Whoniverse is concerned.
Well, that's the principle, I suppose, isn't it, Christian? Because as much as people like you and I, we've both got big gobs, and we know that, don't we? That's not news to either of us.
I know.
But the truth of the matter is,
I just want to let people know. I mean, every subscriber, every notification bell, every like, everything, it helps us every step of the way grow and become bigger and become more of an influence out there. And hopefully people will recognize our voices and go, hey, you know what, there's something different. And all of us, if you go on a different podcast, you go to Dan's, you go to mine, you go to Noel's, you go to the Rabbis, you go to Andy's, everybody has a different influence out there. Pick your influence, enjoy it, ride with it, and be known that your voice will be heard.
I think that what people may not realize is that, for all that, I think you've got to have, speaking to Kyle Wagner from the Fandom Podcast Network about this, not everybody wants to put their opinions out there and wants to speak publicly like this. But part of the joy of it is to, even if you're not initializing a conversation, it's to be part of a conversation and an exchange of ideas and opinions and views from literally all over the world now. The world is a much smaller place, isn't it, Christian, in the 21st century? And it's a shame not to seize that, isn't it? And to look at the things that unite us and divide us, but crucially to keep it to Queensberry rules, to to keep your code of conduct. I think that's something that I think you and I both believe in. To have an exchange of views in a polite and productive way, in a charged way, to be passionate about the things that you say and how you say them. But it's that mutual respect that's really important, isn't it?
Exactly. And actually, can I add a little bit to this? Because this is where I'm going to get my show a little props out there. When I first started on this, first of all, I got to give a special thank you to Garrett Palmacher of the Hanging with Web show and my friend Sheen Turnbow over at sci-fi.radio. They were the ones who said it's time. Garrett goes into a room, because I was working with him. I was his co-host for a short amount of time on the Hanging with show. And he goes, I think it's time for you. And I'm just like, what do you mean? He goes, you should do your own podcast. There's enough people who've been wanting you to do this. Let's do this. And I'm just like, no. I always, I always interpretate this when I've been on other podcasts. I kind of like the comfort of being the Bernie Taupin to the Elton John. So I always like being in the background, being the supportive cast. I've never been somebody who's taken over. So if I sit in the corner and I say my thing, it's like I want Elton John to get all the recognition, but just remember there is a Bernie Taupin who just keeps things going, and I didn't mind being in the shadows of things.
It's not that I don't believe you. It's just you've got one of those voices. You've got one of those really relaxing voices, Christian, that it's so easy to listen to. Oh, well, thank you. But, it's... But I don't know if you appreciate where I'm coming. I believe that if you could tell me that the world was about to end in 5 minutes, but because of the tone of your voice, I'd probably turn around and think, you know what? I'm okay with that. Because Christian just told me.
Everybody, the world is going to end in 5 minutes, but you'll be just fine.
Oh, just imagine where this one's going to go when we open that the casket marked frequently asked questions now. Okay, we're going to get started now. I mean,
you have an intro for that? Love it.
Mate, I've got an intro for everything. Okay, the general principle is that Doctor Who fans, being such as we are, when we congregate, you may meet other fans via any one of a number of ways. You may meet them through friends or at work, through a dedicated sort of hub that's designed to bring fans of all things geeky together. It doesn't really matter how we meet one another. There's a sort of exchange as we weigh each other up, but really quite quickly, we sort of refer back to one set of questions, don't we? The frequently asked questions about Doctor Who that we use to sort of, a bit like the Terminator when he gets that readout in his head, or RoboCop, to equate one another, to weigh one another up about where we stand. And I think the first one, the most obvious of them all, Christian, is Doctor when? Where were you? How old were you? And how did you become aware that there was even a thing out there called Doctor Who?
1970s, something, probably late 70s. When I go to panels, I tell people I'm a creature of PBS. That's when I first was introduced to Doctor Who. And the character was this guy with a hat, big teeth, floppy hair, big scarf. And unknowingly, I could not, I've had heroes in growing up, and watching TV, and movies like Christopher Reeve as Superman, Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, the Transformers, the GoBots. We don't talk about them. I mean, we've had other shows, but here's this one show in the middle of a channel that I don't frequently watch, because this, it was Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, 321 Contact, Electric Company, and then all of a sudden, here comes this show that I was really hooked on called Doctor Who. I don't remember the first episode. I tell people it's Robot. I'm going to be honest on this show and I'm always honest, but it's just like I've always been embarrassed that I hadn't known what the first one. So I always say it was Robot, which might be the truth, but I just remember it was Tom Baker and Sarah Jane Smith, and I just love Tom because this is the weird part about things when people, I'm Filipino. The reason why I say that is because people have said that they don't see themselves on TV unless it looks like them, which is kind of a strange thing for me, because here was this British guy with big teeth, big eyes, a scarf. Yes, my boy right there, Tom Baker. And I easily related to his character better than anything else that I ever saw on TV. He had no weapons. He was quick-witted. He always had that off sense of humor and that wildly eyed stare that just like, is he really insane? And I related to him. And he didn't look like me, but his personality and things that I wanted to attain to, because I thought, as a kid, Asian, I don't want to get that stereotype, but I thought myself as kind of book smart, always wanted to be street smart, always had that little joke, or that quip, they call it, that I throw out every now and then, that people used to love me about, because that was just the way it was. And I found a character on TV, on PBS, that I related to. This
Yeah.
is amongst everything out there that was ever put out there.
Do
I'm
you,
not saying I couldn't relate, but this was
do
the
you
one
think
that
it's the classic thing though that I hear? In fact, I've been hearing it for decades now. That the Doctor is an outsider and he relates to other outsiders, and you could be an outsider for any one of a number of reasons. This is why I suppose some children, loners, children who maybe aren't good at sports, and they get picked last in the playground games or whatever, or kids who prefer to read would rather be
yeah.
alone in the library, genuinely, and sort of tend to get left out of things. Or it could be
I
children who are growing up who are gay and who haven't realised yet or come out yet. Doctor Who tends to speak to them. Various different outsiders in various sections of society, and the Doctor seems to sort of open those blue
It's
doors.
a
And
possibility, but I can only speak for me. I don't know how
yeah,
how Doctor Who spoke for themselves. The funny part about getting the social media when I started, when it started coming to its fruition, when I was a kid, Doctor Who was not a thing. You didn't mention it. It was never brought across. And I actually, for 1 year, cosplay, uh, made a Doctor Who costume. I actually had a long scarf. I had a robe that had like that was like a Sherlock Holmes kind of
yeah.
deal. It was just a bathrobe, but it was designed. And I found a hat and I wore it to school, and everybody was like, "Oh, Doctor Who, oh." And I was like, "Well, people know about it, but
So people recognised who you were supposed to be.
yeah, I didn't surprise and get the crap kicked out of me for bringing it to school." I mean, everybody else had other stuff. They were like princesses or the whatever.
Football shirts or whatever.
But yeah, but it's just I brought it up, and when I wore it, and after I wore it, I put it in the closet. It was never going to see the light of day again, and that hurt. And but I think it made me a stronger person to realize, what, this is kind of what life is. You do have your love and passions, but it's up to you how you want to make your love and passions grow. And people are going to be out there. I mean 2021. I mean you say something out there and people are going to ridicule for it, even if it's nothing to do with anything that you mention or say. This is constantly happening. Somebody will say something on Twitter, be misinterpreted, and 200 people will jump on them. And like, what's no different than that kid who tried to put on a costume, walk around his school, and got taunted? I mean, it's you become the bully, you don't even know it. That's the
Yeah, it's
sad
like a
part
big
about the book.
virtual playground. Yeah, I
I
think
know.
you're right. The more I think about that, yeah.
But the thing was, not only did social media opened up to people that I went to school with, and they were Whovians, and they could not do the same thing I could because it wasn't popular. It wasn't something that be said. And I was so happy when 2005 hit, because I went onto the convention circuit later on, and now I can tell kids growing up today about the kid who put his costume in the closet and never got to be seen again, because those kids now are opening up that closet and putting on that costume with pride. And I miss that kid, but now he's come back and he's running a podcast and doing all this weird stuff. And by the
So you
way,
feel that this has brought you full circle almost in your life, the timing
in,
of it.
in a case, yeah, I meant, well, here we go. What was it? 20, was it 220? We're in 2012. As a goof. It was really just like a hobby at the time. I went on Amazon, put up the words TARDIS diecast, and bought this for $75, including shipping.
Okay, so tell us exactly what that is.
That is the traveling. Well, this is a police box that I bought 10 years ago. May 19th this year, Dan, will be the 10th anniversary of this blue box
And a
starting,
very fine blue box it
and a
is
very
too.
fine
It's
blue box. And you
beautifully
notice
pointed.
it's been a little bit distorted. I intentionally got it as a die cast because I've dropped it a few times, and when I bought it, it went through a lot. I mean, the paint, if you notice it, it's not got its original blue paint because it kept falling off, so I couldn't even keep it up. So
But
Chrissy,
it's
my
given
wife.
it this sort of wonderful, almost pewter.
Well, here's the thing: when it was painted, when Chrissy would paint, my wife would constantly paint this. it kept falling off because it didn't have what it called a primer. It wouldn't absorb,
yeah.
so it kept chipping and chipping and chipping. One day she just went over there and just cut it off, and then I took it to Downtown Disney. And I know you censored the pictures, but if you look at some of the pictures, when it was blue, it was a silhouette. So it was just the outline of the TARDIS.
Yeah.
But with some of the pictures, I don't know if you have them, but later on when I took the picture and I took it like this, it absorbed the light. So now it became the character. You could actually now see the TARDIS. And
It
in
is
some
so
cases,
distinctive, Christian. I didn't realize it was effectively a bespoke item that, albeit accidentally, is unique to you and to your, and what would you call it? Your adventures.
My legend, I guess, for a minute. Yeah,
from that has grown all of this identity, this whole kind of movement, and this album of incredible photography of that little blue, sort of slightly metallic box being held by the great and the good, and just anybody really who takes the time to have their picture taken with it and you, aren't they? It can be people from the TV shows and the movies that we all watch, or cosplayers and general fans. This is what I like about what you do. It's all very, very inclusive. Like it is literally open to all in the true sense of the word of inclusivity.
Well, I love the fact that when I first started taking a picture of it at the conventions all so long ago, I had to beg cosplayers, like you see at the bottom down there. I had to, get celebrities like you see Garrett Wong and Denise Crosby at the top and cosplayers and say, take a picture of it. And, I had to ask people, I wouldn't say beg, but I asked people at the time. You come full circle around the 10th year. Now I go to conventions and everybody's asking me, can I get my picture with the TARDIS? And not only that, but if you look to the left, and I'm not insulting the Predator, but that's what used to happen. They would hold the TARDIS, take a picture, and that was it. There was nothing to it. Now look at the picture on the right, where they're now being more interactive. Now they're taking their cosplay, their story, their geekdom, and they're melding it with their storyline. There's a ton of pictures of this on the traveling.
That element of performance that's coming through in cosplay, because cosplay has evolved so much in the last 10 years, hasn't it? Not just in how elaborate it is, but how widespread.
I didn't send you this photo, but it's sideways the way it's not supposed to be, but that's supposed to be the joke.
Okay, so this is Batman and Robin scaling the building, Adam West style, with
right?
A guy dressed as Deadpool.
Exactly. Look at all that. Yeah, they're trying to get the TARDIS, but that's become the story now. Yeah, it's supposed to be this way.
So creative, so much.
But look
fun.
how look how the stories come together, and that's one of the things I mentioned about geekdom nowadays. Because when it comes to like geekdom, when you go to the conventions, you see all these things like. You'll see the Fourth Doctor playing, soccer with Captain Kirk, and there's Captain Maul in the corner trying to capture the ball. I mean, all this. You couldn't do this with something like a sports team. I mean, like the Dolphins and the 49ers. If they were playing, everybody's separated. They're all got their faces painted. They're all wearing their favorite jersey colors. There's not a mixture of love. It's supposed to be a competitive event. But when you get to something like a convention and cosplayers, they're taking their geek and their passion, their love, and they're going out there, unrestrictive. In the same way that I wore that outfit to school and then got mocked and went back. Now they're not being mocked; they're being celebrated. Oh,
well, I suppose that brings me to my next question. For all these pictures that you have taken, if you could cosplay as one Doctor Who figure now, who would that be?
I don't cosplay. I've shamed myself out of cosplay. Yeah. I've asked people.
One person where the people who were out there, were you in some sort of costume, and everybody else, no one need even know it was you. It was just your secret. Would there be anything?
Of course, 4, because he started everything. I might even do 6, Sylvester McCoy, because I do love that outfit. I've grown to love it. I hated it at first, but it was just like I've grown to love it because it's just tacky and completely whacked out. I have cosplayed once. I actually have a friend. Her name is I'm the cosplay Weird Woman cosplay and modeling. Her real name's Lauren, and I said I was going to do it for once because I was invited to an actual cosplay convention, and the heads of the convention got mad. And it's like, why aren't you cosplaying? And I said, well, I don't do that. And go, you're going to a cosplay convention and you're not even going to cosplay.
I'd be
So,
just like you.
yeah, so out of the whim, and I should have sent you that picture. Out of a whim, I decided the simplest thing I could cosplay was Rimmer from Red Dwarf. So I got the H, I got the spirit gum, and Chrissy was so wonderful to find the outfit, put it together, and we even found the badges on I think it was on Etsy or something like that. And we ordered the badges that he wear the said he has Jupiter Mining Corporation and everything. And I wore it. And Lauren said, I love you so much that I am going to cosplay as Lister if you go as Rimmer. And she did. She fulfilled that obligation.
That's friendship for you.
Yep, and we went. Nobody knew who the hell we were, but I didn't care, and I was Rimmer, and I acted like Rimmer, and I did the salute up against everything, going up to Thor and going total smeghead. You look like everything that with that line from I don't know if I can say now, a rejected gay pride parade, things like that, and it was just all in good fun. And I'm just like, now I kind of get the idea of what this cosplay is, but I haven't put back a cosplay on since.
So
I still have Rimmer.
When you talked about growing up watching Doctor Who, and it was always on PBS, was it always in rotation? So did they start at the Tom Baker years, and did it always get up to a certain point and then go back to the Tom Baker years?
Yes, that was another story. See, this is where I'm actually okay with when I was growing up, because people will say this. There was a joke, and I wrote an article for D-Res, for Clownfish, the Clownfish TV folks. I wrote an article for them. And the title of it was called, I love Matt Smith. He's my favorite third Doctor. And I wrote the article because that was what somebody said to me. Now, I did not correct the kid at that time, because when I grew up watching on PBS, Tom Baker is all I knew. It started at Robot. He falls off a tower at Logopolis, turns into this blonde, and it starts all over. I thought that was Doctor Who. I had no idea, thanks to PBS, that wasn't the case. But because that was all they were showing, that's all they could afford, they kept rotating and rotating that. Then I guess they got into a large sum of money, because all of a sudden there was an episode that they were doing, a premiere of a special called The Five Doctors. Yeah, let that sink into a kid who's only known one Doctor and not knowing it was the fourth Doctor.
Your mind. Yeah.
And here comes the blonde, and they show Castrovalva, and it was like, oh, when does he turn curly hair again? Because I don't like this guy. He took my Doctor away. But I kind of got used to Peter Davison. But after I watched The Five Doctors, like, what is this all about? It brought me back to watching, when they finally got enough money to watch the classic Who, the first, the second, and the third, John, Patrick, and William. Now, of course, I'm a kid growing up in the 80s, so those black and white films don't impress me, and I fell asleep during the time. But, only be fair, because I was a kid, I love watching Doctor Who, but I always fall asleep because they put the episode as one. They didn't separate it into 30-minute or 45-minute episodes with the cliffhanger. It was like I watched the whole thing, and if I didn't fall asleep, good on me at that time, or it was I was just tired or whatever. It was Saturday, so
you've mentioned that you came to the show pretty much with, well, you're not sure which story, but with Tom. But is, by extension though, and you've talked about Tom a few times, but that doesn't necessarily mean that just because somebody is your first Doctor, that they are your favorite Doctor, that it's your Doctor. So have you got a specific Doctor you call my Doctor? Is it Tom, or is it somebody else?
Still Tom. It will never be there. There will never probably be another. People have come very close, but my gateway drug is the person who I relate to the most. When you see other, when Christopher Eccleston came to the episode, the first thing he was talking about was, I want a word with Tom Baker. It seems to be he seemed to be like the template of when it started to become an international icon. Now, it might start at Pertwee, but it didn't get to me until Tom Baker. And that's how I see through the eyes of Doctor Who, because Tom was my first Doctor. So everybody got related to Tom Baker. Colin Baker, Patrick Troughton, everybody. Tom set the mold for me as far as what the character is today. And I think if you see this with even the current generation, you know, a lot of people recognize that floppy scarf and that curly hair and the.
And is that still the case? Because obviously 10 years ago, through exposure on Netflix, Doctor Who hit as big as it ever has in the States when Matt Smith was playing the part. But in America, is it still the main guy? When you go up to most people and say Doctor Who, would they still immediately think of Tom Baker?
I would think, well, my generation thinks so. I think with the newer generation, because it's now had a more of a 10-year longevity, and you've had like 5 doctors play the role, 6 if you want to count John Hurt. There's been some time that's passed. So now the new generation has their doctor, and it normally is where they started everything. But my favorite new Who is Peter Capaldi, not only as an actor, but as a person as well. And I've argued to this, is that he's a fan of the fans, and you can tell. He loves geeking out with the fans.
He seems to wear those colours very, very proudly. I've never met Peter, but everybody I know who has all says the same thing. He's very much one of us.
He is. Pretense. Well, I mean, when that YouTube video that you see him with the kids over at the Experience, where he's actually in character talking about Susan. They're asking him all the questions. Do you have the Capaldi picture? I'll even tell the story.
No, I haven't had time to.
Oh, okay. Well, go to the traveling time.
I've got that there.
Yeah, but it's got to be the picture that I took of him out there. But I'll probably put it or something like that. It's Peter Capaldi. I got a picture with him with the TARDIS, with the traveling TARDIS. And I walked up to him, held him the TARDIS, walked away, and he looks at me just like, what am I supposed to do? His first words, I said, do whatever you want to do. Do whatever comes to mind out there.
Express yourself, basically.
Express yourself. And he goes, do what you do best. And I wish I could show the picture, but without skipping a beat, he did something like this with the TARDIS.
He did the thing. He did the Capaldi thing.
He did the Capaldi
thing. I've seen the picture. It is a great picture, but I think people will know simply by your gestures and by us describing it for people listening and watching. They'll know exactly what it is that you're talking about.
It's one of the most popular traveling TARDIS pictures, but there's another story behind it, because I grabbed the TARDIS, started walking away, and Peter goes, no. I'm like, what? He literally grabs me by the shirt, pulls me back in, and goes, you're getting a picture with me. So the people at the convention, the people who are running the photo booth, have no idea what's going on, because he's demanding that I get a second picture with him in the picture.
He's the boss.
And that picture is, I haven't put it online. I keep that one to myself. But Peter Capaldi inadvertently gave me a 2-for-1 at that convention, and he insisted that I take a picture with him because he thought, he wanted me to be part of it. He thought it was just really strange. I said, no, it's just about that TARDIS. It's all, that whole Facebook page is about that TARDIS. But now I got a 2 for him because I believe that he is a big fan of the fans. That was the moment that I solidified that ideology when it comes to Peter, because I've seen him do other stuff. One of my friends at a convention in Miami, Peter comes on stage. Now, he had set it up. My friend, his name's Patty Hawkins. He set it up. He's over at GalaxyCon. He had all the 12 cosplayers come up on stage, and he had Peter Capaldi in the back, waiting in the wings out there. And he goes, okay, everybody, we're going to take our picture, and there we're going to see who the best 12th Doctor is. And lo and behold, Peter Capaldi walks out on stage with all the cosplayers, and he takes a picture. Now, he had me stand next to Peter because I was actually cosplaying Peter, but in a weird sense, and I don't have him with me. I'm sure I have him somewhere. I had made a cosplay joke where I took his eyes from the 50th anniversary, that eye shot that he does, and I cut out the picture, laminated it, and put it on some 3D sunglasses. I just popped the eyes out and made that into a cosplay. And I walked around the conventions like that. So when I was very close to Peter on stage, he turns around, sees his own eyes as sunglasses, and he just certainly if somebody took a picture and he just goes, so he's a fan of the fans. That's what I love about him. This
he
is not
got it. He got
right,
what you were doing with it. He responded to it
exactly, and and this is no discredit to the other people who played the Doctor, but I have a connection with Peter when it comes to the fandom. Even though I haven't really truly met the guy face to face, I haven't really sat down and talked to him like we're doing right now.
I mean, there are people. I mean, Russell T Davies for one, who insists that people either identify as the Doctor and want to be the Doctor, or when they watch Doctor Who, they identify with the companion. I mean, that's what the companions were created for, and they want to be swept away in the TARDIS. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at the Doctor's various best friends, those companions, and can you possibly, out of all those decades, all those combinations, can you nail down, have you got a favorite companion or combination of companions? Do you think that it works best as one Doctor, one companion, or have you no problem at all with the crowded TARDIS thing of 2 or 3 people?
I think when it came to Jodie, she should have just had one companion because people were getting used to her. So I think one companion should have been enough. Having multiple companions and trying to get used to the first female Doctor, I think threw everything off because it didn't put the focus completely on her, and people were kind of liking Graham and such. I do like when it comes. Oh, hi there. Nice.
A bit of interference there. Don't know
what's interference.
Yeah.
Did I say the J word and it came up? By the way, congratulations.
It'll be fine.
Jodie.
It'll be fine.
Congratulations, Jodie. We hope that it's a Time Lord, whatever it is. So.
No, but the principle of what you're saying is absolutely true. I mean, you could say they did the same back in '82 with Peter Davison, and it's arguable as to whether that worked or not. I think it did work for the most part, considerably better than it worked in 2018. But obviously there were teething problems there too. And
well, he was inherited those companions. What happened is
wasn't an entire new cast coming in all at once.
You start with one Doctor, especially if it's going to be a brand new Doctor. Get people comfortable with that Doctor. Try to through the one companion, and then you can add more later on once we understand the characters. But when you start off a new Doctor with a whole bunch, like that, having the TARDIS that full, but you had companions that really bumped off the Doctor, like Mary Tam and Tom Baker, and then Lalla Ward really filled up her shoes pretty well and made it her own. But Sarah Jane, the only time that it kind of worked for me counter to that would have been Tom Baker, because Harry Sullivan was a nice little third wheel in that little thing, because he was kind of the reality of things. It's like, Doctor, no, you can't do that. No, that's that's not supposed to be happening.
Because Sarah would kind of encourage him, and Harry would be the one saying, hey, have you two really thought about this, about what you're about to do?
Exactly, because Sarah knew the Doctor, and she looked through everything through the Doctor's eyes, but hardly ever saw a thing from Harry's, because she kind of left that life. When she first came onto the scene, she was, people don't know this, and this is what drives me insane when they talk about feminism. Sarah Jane was the first true kind of feminist. I mean, she came out when she was a reporter, and she really took the Third Doctor to task. So that relationship,
I think she was the first sort of conscious effort to mix things up in that way, to put them on a kind of equal footing. I don't know whether that came from Barry Letts or whether it came in the conversations between Tom and Liz, even though he was the great intellect. I got the impression there was more mutual respect there and a kinship there than there'd ever been before. And that's not meaning to say that I think the previous combinations didn't work. They did, but they had their own parameters and they had their own remit as the audience kind of evolved with the show.
Well, Katie Manning's Jo Grant kind of started that wave, but because her story ran out,
impishness that she brought out in Pertwee's Doctor. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Exactly. Yeah. It started that way, but it came full on to Sarah Jane. But Sarah Jane kind of went further. And then as soon as she got with Tom, she kind of pulled it back. In fact, I was watching Robot again, and there's one scene that actually caught me off guard that I didn't really attribute to. It's I forgot the doctor's name, but there's a female and a male in front of her, and Sarah Jane assumes that the male is the doctor, and the female character chastises Sarah Jane, going like, "I didn't know, you were a bigot, or a bigotry or whatever." She really chastises, and it turns out the female was the doctor she was referring to. So it was just like, oh, so backfired kind of on Sarah Jane.
That's when she goes to think tank, isn't it? In Robot.
Yes. Yes, and she goes to think tank. I'm sorry, I don't know the characters' names. I'm sure somebody can go into the chats and start.
Is it Dr. Winters? Something like that.
I could pull it up. I mean, I got a split second.
I know who she's played by. She's played by Dennis Waterman's wife. His wife at the time. Can't tell you anything else. And she's returned to the role as well. I think they brought her back for a Big Finish story with Liz Sladen.
I can't even keep up with Big Finish anymore. I'm
I'm not sure that Big Finish can keep up with Big Finish.
I know. It's just like,
Kenny, I know you can keep up with Big Finish, but none of the rest of us can. Please
I can't.
tell them to slow it down.
I can't tell Nick Briggs. I mean, I'm sure he's, getting the windfall of like, I got to keep the content going. As soon as he gets like Eccleston, it's like, oh, keep going. Now we can do multi-doctors. Now we can have 9 and 10 and 4 and 8 and everybody out there, and just go completely ape crap on everything out there. My favorite, but going back to your question, my favorite companion would probably be Sarah Jane Smith until, and here's the one everybody thinks I'm going to be strange, and even though I don't, not that she has left my favorites pool, but I was very upset when I heard that Nardole was going to return in Dr. Mysterio. Because after what I saw in The Husbands of Riversong, I'm like, are you serious? You're going to bring Mac Lucas back as Nardole, as a companion, and this is supposed to work? And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a train wreck.
I was exactly the same, Christian.
And I was pleasantly wrong. I will openly say that, because the scene where Capaldi walks in, and he's talking about the map on the screen with the journalist woman, and he's going, "Oh, they're going over the capital cities," and Nardole just walks in eating, going, "No, they're not." I'm like, what just happened?
It's quite even though some of the moments because Matt Lucas, he's hardly an actor known for his subtlety.
Yeah.
He's not that kind of performer.
Oh yeah,
he's a physical comedian. And yet when he dials that character back, it works so beautifully.
Well, we don't get to see he was kind of like a joke character, a one-off character in The Husbands of Riversong. But once he brought it in, and Moffat, which I didn't appreciate at the time with Dr. Mysterio, brought in this script, I was, oh God, now he's talking about Marvel and DC. Now Doctor Who's got to do it. So I was kind of negative on that, but I lost the appreciation of what was really happening in the story by that. And Nardole brought back what I was missing for the longest time, which only has been seen a couple times. He brought back the buddy with Nardole. You saw 2 and Jamie back. You saw 4 and Sarah Jane back. You saw 10 and Donna back. It was the buddy. There was no romance. There was nothing to it. They were the buddies. And what I appreciate about Nardole is
there was that kind of that class structure thing going on there too. I think it felt like the PG Woodhouse, Jeeves and Wooster almost, but they would flip even that. So even though it looked like Nardole was in service to the Doctor, he'd also got something on the Doctor because
he was keeping him in check.
Yeah,
because he didn't have the companion to keep him in check. And if you notice, there were those scenes where he's dressed up in this Egyptian garden. He's flying the TARDIS. I'm like, what the heck? And the Doctor pulls a lever and Nardole throws it back. So, but one of my favorite scenes of my top 10 favorite scenes is a scene from Veritas, I think that was it, the Book of Veritas, where Missy's about to be executed and Nardole comes in as a monk and he goes, "I've been given permission by your wife to kick your ass." He knows where the Doctor lies. I think as far as his reputation, he is the space god, as my friend puts it. He is the space god, but he knows when not to cross that line, because he knows when the Doctor goes off, he goes. But he knows that he wants to support him. He loves him. That scene at the end of Mysterio, the Doctor doesn't say anything about River or anything of that nature. He just says his piece and he leaves. Nardole waits until he leaves, and then he says the story of River Song. So now we understand the compassion that Nardole has for the Doctor, but he also knows when not to cross the line. There were times when, like, Perry would way go over the Sixth Doctor, and it just made him just too, it felt like a husband and wife that were fighting that you didn't want to watch.
It felt like he was being henpecked at times.
He was being henpecked, and the same thing happened when I discuss about Claire. I understand why Snowman Claire wanted to get in the TARDIS. I understood why Dalek Claire wanted to get in the TARDIS. I didn't understand why Claire Prime wanted into the TARDIS, because she seemed to be running out of it or finding reasons to get out of it, and she started becoming henpecked. And when she ran her longevity after what was it, Last Christmas, I started hating her character, because the scene where she meets Danny Pink again and she returns back to the life that lost Danny Pink, I started going, you're a selfish bee. And that had nothing to do with Jenna Coleman. That had a lot to do with the writing and trying to keep her on. I said, you really overran Clara.
It was contrived, wasn't it? It was really, really contrived.
I know.
It didn't feel true to the character that we'd come to know over the previous 20 episodes.
Well, I think you should have ended it right when Danny Pink died and left. And it's like, no, this life is not for me. This has gone too far. The person that I love just got killed. This is going too far.
At the hands of those horrible, diabolical Cybermen. Speaking of which, let's move on and talk about the real stars of Doctor Who. Christian, we are told by many people, are in fact the monsters and the villains. This is, I suppose, the lowest hanging fruit of them all. Do you have a favourite Doctor Who monster? And if so, who would it be?
I think Michael Grade was the worst monster in Doctor Who.
So you have your answer. You're going for the Daleks?
No, I don't, because I used to love the Daleks, but they've just been overplayed so much that they're kind of I used to be able to answer this question, and I can't anymore. I'm trying to I think
is it the Mandrels?
Are we trying to say
have I got another Mandrel fan? Are you a Mandrel fan just like me?
Drug made monsters? I don't know about that. Are we talking monsters, villains, or are we doing a combination of both?
Either or, whichever.
Okay. The Valyard.
The Valyard.
I love the Valyard because it really put the Doctor in check.
The concept of the Valyard, or particularly as played by the brilliant Michael J.
All the above, of course. I love, not only I think I have the CD, but my room's a bit of a mess. Not only do I love the Trial of the Time Lord, because it really showed the best of Colin and Michael, but I also have the CD of Trial of the Valyard. I don't know.
The sequel.
That.
Yeah,
I've
got that.
You've got to listen. If you loved Trial of the Time Lord, Trial of the Valyard is a wonderful sequel to it. It has the last, I think, in play of Linda Bellingham.
Linda Bellingham's in that,
yeah, and it really not only focuses on all three characters. It is just the three of them, but what happens after? Now the moral compass of the Doctor's in challenge. The Valyard is getting to the point. Can I give you a little bit of the description?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so the Doctor is recalled back to the trial room, and the Doctor's like, nope, I'm not coming out this time. I did that the last time. No, I know what happens here. I'm not coming out. And he does this for 5 minutes. And then finally he opens the TARDIS doors. Okay, I'm coming out, but that doesn't mean I'm going on trial. And like he's doing this whole routine bit of like why he's not coming out of the TARDIS, why he's not going to get involved. And finally he walks right into the trial room, and he discovers that after yelling at the Time Lords for a good 5 minutes, going like, I don't know what you're doing. I am not here. And he just finally goes, I'm guilty. Whatever you think I've done, I'm guilty. Go ahead, execute. I don't care. I'd rather not be here. He goes, we're not here for you. It's just Linda Bellingham just gives it to him, just like, we're not here for you. And he goes, well, what am I here for? you're being asked to defend somebody. Who? The Valyard. The Valyard has
Yes,
asked the
brilliant.
Doctor to become his defense attorney.
It's such a simple
And
idea, isn't it? And
it's
yet it's
such
so brilliant.
yeah, and the way that they tell the story, it's explosive. You got to check it out. If you if you get any Big Finish and you're
Big Finish
classic
at their
Who,
best.
yeah, the Trial of the Valyard, and it has a very interesting ending to where that this is the last episode of the Valyard besides the last adventure. It works for me. It really works for me.
So do you prefer then the humanoid opponents for the Doctor rather than the lumbering monsters, or do you just like it when they mix it up?
I like it when they mix it up. I mean, I love the Weeping Angels in their original sense, which is what they would kill you by sending you back in time and living your life out while they feed it off to energy. Now that we've come up to the Flux version, I'm like, okay, we're overdoing it. Now we're
Not
giving
even
them
sure what they can do anymore.
yeah, we're giving them superpowers.
Bit of a deal breaker. Bit of a deal breaker.
Exactly. Yes, it's a little bit. Yeah, thank you. That's the face I get when I'm like, okay, now the Weeping Angels can do this. Okay, you can't be touched twice in a row. Okay, I'm like, I'll accept that. And
Contrivance, considerably worse, damaging as well, because these
yeah,
are perennial villains that have got so much longevity to them. They've all been used so sparsely too that yeah, it's a shame to fracture them to that extent.
and I mean, if you want to go in the Timeless Children, that's kind of where I'm actually alluding to.
You can go there if you like.
Oh yeah, this is where you're
No.
going to get unsubscribe people from me and you now.
No, carry on.
I when they did the episode the trial I'm sorry, the Timeless Children. First of all, Dan, you know me, I don't turn off Doctor Who for any reason. I could be watching Fear Her in the middle of it, and I'll pick it up and watch
I'm
it.
exactly the same.
I turned it off twice in series 12. Literally turned it off and would not watch it, and got to the point where I'm not watching this again. The first time was Orphan 55. And the Earth moment reveal, I turned it off and said, you people just stole the Ravelock story. You basically...
It's the direct lift, same story?
Exactly. Well, no, it's not a direct... You haven't seen the series, have you?
Yes. Oh, yes, I have. Oh,
okay.
God, have I?
But I mean, when they finally revealed that where they've been at the whole time is Earth, I said, you just ripped off Ravelocks. That was the whole, that was kind of it was started in the Mysterious Planet, where they did a little bit earlier. I think they should have probably put it at the end, because that would have been a nice reveal about that. But just like, you only ripped it off. But this whole concept of the person that tells it best is probably the critical drinker. I parrot everything he says about that episode. Just how it was just
yeah, he put out a really
try.
savage analysis of that
Yeah,
episode,
and I put out the same feelings to it as well. I mean, like, this is a joke of an episode, because not only that, but I have to put in my head that the writings of today are now being compared or sit on a shelf in the final of things with Douglas Adams, Philip Hinchcliffe, Terrence Dix. All those people are going to be sitting with them. I'm like, you do not belong here. You do not belong in these people. You don't know who you belong with. Thank you. Pantheon is probably the word I was looking for. And it just doesn't work. You guys are still kind of new to this. And then I was looking in the background of some of the writers. One of them was I forgot which one, but I stopped looking when the person who was known for it was, they wrote a play about genital mutilation. I'm like, so where's the sci-fi coming in? Where are you going? And I'm just like, when
somebody look at at a professional with a track record like that and think
nothing,
they've got the chops to write for Doctor Who,
right? And if you look at the when we look at our favorite YouTubers out there, they're like, okay, let's look at their resume. It's about that big. Yeah. Oh, you're going to be writing a Marvel movie about one of the most favorite characters? No, I don't think so. Or you're going to write this TV series about, the sci-fi TV series from the ground up. When the Timeless Children came up, and I was screaming at the TV again, I was just like, what the heck is all this nonsense? Why are we And I was trying not to use the word retcon, but it is a retcon. It is a big old retcon. It is a
I
big
agree
old
completely.
thing. And I turned it off. And when I was even doing the reviews, we normally do 1 through 10, 1 being bad, 10 being good. I could not even give it a number. I was sitting there going like, I have no idea what to rate this. And when I finally got my head around it, I think I rated it. I tried to pull it out as being its own episode. Try not to look at it. First of all, I think I'm rated a 3 because it was just a junk episode.
Yeah,
I mean, just by itself. I mean,
you probably don't remember this, but you and I spoke within about 48 hours of that being on, and you said exactly the same thing. I've got to score this episode. I don't know what.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I think I gave it a 3. And the one thing that really got to me about the Timeless Children, and I said, this is where, if I have to do this, because when I was trying not to be emotional about it, because if I was going to be, I would look like Gary, or maybe better, Bostrek. I would look like Bostrek with the goat in play. And I said, you know what? Here is where I feel this screwed up. You told Bruce Wayne he's been Superman the whole time. And I let people think about that. And I said, you told Bruce Wayne he's been Superman this whole time. There is no Clark Kent. There is no Martha Kent or anything like that. Bruce, you've had the power this whole time to fly, to go around and stop all these criminals with your heat vision and whatnot. Do you understand where I'm coming with this?
I think all this talk of Orphan 55 and the Timeless Children and the current drastic failure of an era, I think that has this is just a perfect time to go away and to freshen up for a couple of minutes is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, here's a little break.
We're
going to connect. We're going to connect with all our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network across all those other shows. You're not going to want to miss all the brilliant cult conversations that are going on across Star Wars, Star Trek, Highlander, thriller movies, the Alfred Hitchcock boys, all of that. It's all going on the Fandom Podcast Network. And here's Kevin with a couple of minutes worth of words about all of that. And then you can meet Christian and myself back here for more Doctor Who talk and more frequently asked questions.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to these other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, discussing the latest in entertainment pop culture. Bloody Kings, Immortals Take Notice, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theaters, where we celebrate our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie and TV pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville show. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our show covering the time-traveling Doctor Who universe with host Dan Hadley. Lethal Mullet, an 80s and 90s action film podcast with host Adam P. O'Brien. Also check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast with hosts Scott, Derek, and Nathan. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. And check out our newest shows, The Fandom Show, our monthly Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube exclusive show about the month's hottest topics in fandom, and the FPN True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related Marvel television and streaming MCU universe, including the connections to the original Marvel comics. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on several platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel to receive notifications of new podcast episodes and live events. You can enjoy all of the Fandom Podcast Network audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPodNetwork. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
Yes, we've teased and tantalized you there. And we can even clothe you too. There's merch to match all of those shows, including Type 40. If you head over to tpublic.com, search for the Fandom Podcast Network. I know, it's incredible. And you'll find a store full of all the team colours for all of those shows on everything from the T-shirts to phone cases, tapestries, you name it. Treat yourself. Treat your other selves. And it all goes to support the Fandom Podcast Network into the bargain. So everybody wins, everybody. Back here with Christian Basel and his instrument of destruction. He hasn't dipped off in the travelling TARDIS. He's here. You found one. You got one of the fabled Capaldi Sonics.
I paid for this one in full price, and that hurt.
I know you did. You were looking for one for quite a while, weren't you, to complete your collection?
Yeah, well, I mean, they used to be a friend of mine, well, former friend of mine, sold these, and these were like $30, and I also had 11s, and now 11s is going for like 120 on Amazon. I'm just jeez, but I wanted a Capaldi. This is actually, against all my favorite, this is my favorite one. So,
I remember. So with that in mind, and given the fact that we kind of know what your very, very favourite toy is, not that, we talk about the travelling TARDIS. Are you a collector? Are you a collector, Christian? Have you got a house full of merchandise, or are you quite careful about what you collect and what you commit to? What's your story with Doctor Who merchandise and collectibles?
I begged my friends on one of my birthdays. I said, you can give me, they were looking for like Doctor merchandise for me. I said, please, whatever you do not give me a Funko Pop, because it's a Pringles. It's a Pringles. Once I get one, I need them all. I need a pop. I need this, can't stop.
There's hundreds of things.
Can you inflate me? Let's
Can I inflate you? Okay, hold your breath.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, let me see if I can do there in the background.
It's like that scene from The Wizard of Oz, Christian.
Yes,
behind the curtain.
You can probably see it back there, but I'll bring out the few that merchandise I have out there. I have Missy, the Ninth Doctor. I also have like a thing from Tron. I have one of those CDs. Sophie Aldred did those audios, but they're not big finish. They were like BB.
Oh, BBV. Yeah, BBV. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a picture of Sophie, naked on the cover.
Okay. Does she know you've got this?
Well, yeah, she signed it. So
good girl, Sophie, good girl.
There's a lot more stuff over here, but it's a mixture of Doctor Who, Red Dwarf, and some other stuff out there. It was just hard to focus. But the ones I wanted to bring down, fix that curtain. I really need to get a backdrop. The ones that I brought up forward were one of my favorites, of course, the 12th Doctor.
Oh, yeah.
Funko Pop.
He does look particularly good as a Funko Pop, doesn't he?
Yes, my friend bought me 2, so I got War Doctor, and now I have gone to Funko Pops because now I've got 9. I've got Missy. I've got Cara June because I wanted something outside, and this one is the one that I enjoy the most because I noticed that here in the States, and this is for me. I don't go by the ratings as much anymore. I go by the merchandise when it comes to the geekdom. Because everybody, when I hear the ratings come out, everybody's got a side to it. So if we listen to the people who are anti-Jodie...
Yeah, there is only really one side. If people watch it, the ratings go up. If they stop, they go down. Don't listen to any other argument. It really is that fucking simple, everybody.
Well, the thing is that, okay, there was one argument that, what was it, the iPlayer, or the BBC iPlayer. What was it? Yeah. It hit 60 million or something like that, and most of it was Doctor Who or something of that nature. Yeah. And I had to think about it for a little bit because I said, my question is, that's iPlayer. Is that all Jodie? Because around Christmas time, I had to think about it a little bit. When BBC America had its marathon, they had the Christmas episodes and they had Jodie's episodes leading up to the Daleks.
I mean, to answer your question, Christian, on iPlayer, all 13 seasons of Doctor Who are there to watch next to permanently. So that figure does include absolutely everything.
So it could have been...
It's disingenuous of them to head that with an image of the current era because there's no evidence to support that everything from Series 11, in fact, has dipped considerably. You know, there's less than half the amount of iPlayer hits.
Yeah, I saw you show the
counts,
ratings.
even what counts as an iPlayer play, which is now around, I've heard that it's as short as 2 minutes, but I'm going to say 4 minutes because that was what I heard. But it used to be sort of 10 minutes would count as a play. And before then, it was 50% of an episode. So they're constantly bringing it down. But even with all that put in play, even with all those compromises, it's still well less than half the iPlay views that just Peter Capaldi used to get, let alone anything.
Yeah, like I was saying on that, because the reason why I was thinking about it is because when I really thought about it, I was like, I had set my DVR for all the Christmas episodes and 2 Jodie episodes. One, The Witchfinders, because I wanted to see something about it again. 2 was Eva the Daleks. So I'm like, what are you counting? This is the BBC iPlayer. So is my DVR. Is she getting credit for all the Christmas episodes? Because every Christmas episode, Christmas Carol, The Invasion, all that, they were playing, and I downloaded all.
It's what they call spin, mate. It's what they call spin.
Right. And my anger was also even dressed as just like, you know what? One of the things I looked for around Christmas time was the new episode of Doctor Who. And Chibnall took that away from me.
Yeah.
And put in a Halloween episode that had nothing to do with Halloween. It just had Halloween in the title. Other than that, there was nothing Halloween about that episode. Am I right?
No, the amount of people who feel the same way, we've got evidence to support the idea that Matt Smith feels the same way. Everybody who hears now about the fact that they gave up the Christmas special for a New Year's special, nobody can quite believe it, and nobody can understand the logic behind it.
Here's the thing. They were going like, well, we ran out of ideas. And I said, you know what? I'm sorry. If the Lifetime Network can put out 3 Christmas episodes every year, you can put out one good, half-decent episode a year. And I said, I even wrote an episode, a fanfic, and I think I told you about this, where I wrote it for the 12th Doctor and Bill and Nardole, where the Doctor is going to take Bill and Nardole to Christmas, and he lands the TARDIS, and boom, the TARDIS goes into a time ram, and it turns out December the 25th, the calendar year throughout the universe, is gone. It does not exist. Every calendar goes from the 24th to the 26th. So he goes to different Christmases and notices that all the 25th of December has been gone. And then there's a story behind that. But
that's a really nice idea.
Yeah, it's just like he's got to find out what happened.
Plenty of Christmas ideas left if you know where to look. If you talk to the right people, talk to my friend Christian here.
There you go. Well,
it's too late. He's gone, isn't it? It's too late. But yeah, get Russell on.
Well, Russell, that was we had an episode on Traveling TARDIS that said if you had one wish for Russell T Davies when you goes into the 14th Doctor in the new series, what would it be? And everybody had their own take. And I said, bring the Christmas specials back, because that's what Christmas was to me. And you took it away. So bring them back. I don't care if you bring back the New Year's or the Halloweens. Have a holiday episode for every one of them. But the Christmas episodes really meant a lot to me. And to take them away and just make up the excuse we run out of ideas, it's like, well, then you got lousy writers. Try again.
They were hardly drenched in Christmas as it was. There was, there was prosthetic snow and the odd Christmas tune, and sometimes there was period dress, and that was largely it. So I do think it's yet again very disingenuous of Chris Chibnall to try and pull that one, basically.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But my favorite Funko Pop, and here's the thing: the last place I went to was the Orlando Toy and Comic Con, which happened, I think, about a couple of weeks ago. There were thousands of Funko Pops being sold. Thousands. There must have been at least 15 vendors that's either sold Funko Pops or at least had Funko Pops at the time. Out of the thousands of Funko Pops I saw, how many do you think were Doctor Who?
Well, I hear
not booth, individual Funko Pop, meaning I found this Funko Pop.
3.
You're close. 5.
And
one of them was Tim Shaw. And I spoke to him and said, oh, it was like some kind of special edition that wasn't selling at all. And I said, oh, you have Tim Shaw? And he goes, yeah. And he said this flat out. I didn't even get to it. He said, yeah, the boss bought them. They were a good deal. He's trying to get rid of them. You want one? That's verbatim what I heard. But the reason why I said this, because I went to another convention, and this particular Funko Pop was $45. It was the only Doctor Who Funko Pop, and I regretted not buying it at the time. But now I'm glad I waited. At the time, it was $45. It was the only Funko Pop at this convention that was Doctor Who related. But now I got it for $12, and I am so happy I waited.
Sarah Jane Smith in dungarees too,
Yes.
from the Hand of Fear. Perfect.
With a little ring in her hand too.
How absolutely delightful. Well,
So-
Christian, you've confessed to me your love of Funko Pops there, which has surprised me, I have to say.
No, I don't have a love. Don't get that rumor spreading. I don't want that. I don't want anybody getting me any more Funkos. I have no room for them.
The Cara Dune one in particular, but that sort of leads me into the next
Yeah,
question, really.
Mhm.
Which other big franchises and characters are you a fan of?
Red Dwarf, definitely. Torchwood. Well, I mean, if you consider them outside, Torchwood, Sarah Jane, and
In any order. Yeah, just hit me with a few.
oh god, do they have to be geekdom or just something?
Not
that I like?
necessarily, just something that you geek out about. Could be
All
the
right,
most
here's some
mainstream
weird
thing.
Here's some weird ones. Deadliest Catch, Mysteries at the Museum. I'm trying to think what my library is. I haven't. You see, the thing is, here's a confession. I barely even watch TV. I watch my friends on YouTube. It's almost like having a reunion. I jokingly say that, but it's true. It's just like, I wonder what Gary's doing, and then I watch Gary, or I watch you guys with Charlotte and JT and Simon and the Mega Geek and all the rest.
Yeah.
It's almost like going to your friend's house and having a conversation with them, especially when you can chat online. I've kind of lost my favor in TV because I just don't watch it. Do I watch Star Trek Discovery? No, because there was a scene in it in one of the first episodes, and it completely turned me off from ever watching the series again. And I can't remember and I can't find it as much, but there was a scene I could swear that Michael Burnham was in a jail cell and convinced the jail cell to let her out because she was frightened.
No, that wasn't a cheese dream. That actually happened.
That turned me off.
Yeah,
I'm like,
you're okay, mate.
in what universe does that happen? I'm just like, I'm done. No. The mere fact that she became, this influence to Spock, and there is nothing about Cybok anywhere.
Not
Where's
particularly,
Cybok?
No,
I've
got nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And after that, I just love watching other people rag on it. I love watching Az from Heels for Purpose Baby Safes. I've never seen one episode of Batwoman, and I never will. I just enjoy watching him rip up Batwoman.
Yes, Az has done the Lord's work watching
He's
that,
done
so
the
we
Lord's
don't have
work,
to,
yeah.
isn't he?
And I watch you guys. I watch when my earphone plugs won't blow up, I watch the Rabbi. I watch
We love the
Gary. Clownfish TV are my friends. I know them very well. But I've been watching other YouTube content as opposed to stuff on the cable channel. I almost want to get rid of my cable provider because there seems to be no point, with the exception maybe like I live in Florida, so I want to have 24-hour news when a hurricane hits.
Yeah.
I don't even see the cable channels anymore. And I've been watching kind of off reality TV. Now I've got to go over there and watch what my DVR is because I barely watch it. I mean,
times are changing all the time, aren't they? And not just the things that we watch, but how we watch them. And the people who make them seem to be the very last to catch on to the way the wind is blowing and how the tide has changed. And the fact that we are not the captive audiences that we once were. We have much more options and we're able to think and choose for ourselves. And I would say that forward-thinking companies and creatives would see that as a challenge and seize it. I can think of writers and even production companies that do that. They stand out like sore thumbs.
But now it's become
the majority of them just make content and just hit them with more content.
All my friends out there make content, so might as well just hop on a YouTube channel, which I thought was the whole purpose of YouTube, is to bring other voices and things in, and hopefully somebody will end up like a Jacksepticeye or a Markiplier or a PewDiePie, with getting enough people out there and entering this realm. There are two things I wanted to go back on if I can. I think people want to know that statement that I said, you turn Batman into Superman. Can I expand on that? Or
Of course you can. Yeah, I
do.
thought it was pretty self-explanatory, but
I just in case some people are still scratching their heads, you cheapen the character. You made the character more than they should have been. I think this is going against the Cartmel master plan, which I still think is funny when the mainstream media came out. You know, when I mean mainstream media, I think of like the online media presence. I don't want to say Vox, but the
people. No, I know the kind of people that you're talking about.
They were,
magazines like Stylist and
right. They were pointing to the Cartmel master plan, defending the timeless children. I said, well, that's interesting. We're about to have Cartmel in about a week. Let me ask him about that. And we actually ended up being in the mainstream media just for a little bit for our 15 seconds of fame, because we asked Andrew and he goes, no, this is not exactly where I plan the Cartmel master plan. I mean, now he hasn't seen the episode. Confessingly, there have been people who've gone like, no, he hasn't seen the episode, but we told him about what happened and he was like, no, I wouldn't even gone there. He even gives a few singes at Moffat. Drops the F-bomb on the show. He goes, was I supposed to drop the F? No, but we'll keep it. Don't drop it again or else we're going to censor it. But we had brought it up. And the reason why I say you make this more than what Bruce Wayne should be. The Doctor is the Doctor not because he's the chosen one. The Doctor is the Doctor because of the choices he has made. He has made some good ones. He's made some bad ones. And he still has to, or she at this point, has to work with that moral compass. And that is the whole point. If you make the Doctor more than what the Doctor is, then what's the point? I mean, if you tell Bruce Wayne he can fly now and shoot hot beams from his eyes, then what's the point? That's the part of the Doctor, is the struggle. It's that he is kind of, in a sense, human. He has human frailties.
I agree.
He has
completely.
Human heart. And if you don't put that into a place where it gets challenged, then you lose the concept of the Bruce Wayne. It cheapens the character, and I think you've cheapened the Doctor. It was said best in Twice Upon a Time when the first Doctor is sitting there with Robot Bill, for a better term, and the Doctor is like confused as to why he does, why the universe, evil's not winning. And the Robot Bill says the best thing I could think of at that moment. Maybe it's just a bloke. Maybe that's all it is. And maybe that's all it has to be. It doesn't have to be, that bloke. All those blokes. It could just be one man standing up saying, no more. And that's all it has to be. And that's all who the Doctor should be and was, at least in my eyes. Now that you made her the template of the Time Lords, now that you made her more, not basically not Gallifreyan anymore at this point, and it's coming from, now that we know there's a fob watch out there that could unveil the Doctor and split her into three, or whatever the
who cares
flux
about any
was,
of that nonsense?
who gives a flux, right? You've cheapened the character for me from the time that I grew up watching it during Tom Baker's run, because that's all it was. Maybe it's just a bloke. That's all it was. All it has to be. We know that the Doctor from the Cartmel Master Plan. I'm sorry, let me just throw this in there. From the Cartmel Master Plan, we know there was more to the Doctor, but we don't need to know any more than what we need to see on the TV, because once you do it, there's a reason why it's called Doctor Who, and once you've answered that question, the show's over. Verbatim from Andrew Cartmel.
We are going to drop you back soon, but with that in mind and moving forward, looking specifically forward from as of time of recording, we're in a very unique sweet spot in Doctor Who history, right between eras. So there's very little of all that nonsense to go, and everything that's coming next is exciting. Some of it is familiar. There's some very familiar names.
Did he dye his hair in that picture?
They're going to be steering the ship. We have a new home for Doctor Who with Bad Wolf Studios and that involvement from Sony. We've got Russell T Davies back. We've got Julie Gardner in the mix. Mm-hmm. And we've now got Phil Collins in the mix, along with some new names, some exciting names. So the personnel is starting to line up. How are you feeling about where Doctor Who could go from here? Are you positive, negative, or somewhere quite neutral about it all? Because it's been a tiring few years, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very neutral. because it can go south even further. I've actually said beforehand, when they brought in Jodie Whittaker and Chibnall, I thought it was a significantly good idea, and I even supported it. It's like, oh, first female Doctor, let's check it out. Because I remember Jodie Whittaker from a movie that I cannot stand, but she was the only good thing about the movie, which was Attack the Block. I hated that movie. The characterization was so fun. There's a scene in there. First of all, when it was advertised as a Nick Frost movie.
I remember. I'm a big fan of Attack the Block, so I'm very interested to hear what you've got to say.
It was just, there was a scene in there, Dan, that just blew my mind. One of the kids asked the nurse, Jodie, and the Jodie goes, well, I'm planning on moving out. It's getting too rough for me. It's not a nice neighborhood, or something to that effect. And the kid goes, what do you mean? It's a nice neighborhood. You're robbing her in her own apartment, making her do nurse stuff out of shift while the kid's bleeding in her room. What the hell, people, were you thinking? Yes, it's a bad neighborhood. I would want to get the hell out of there if I was being mobbed and mugged in my own room and being forced to do my job for a kid who, initially screwed himself up. And I didn't even like Nick Frost. He was just like completely like,
he was barely in it, from what I remember.
He was barely in it and blitzed out of his mind the whole time. And here's the thing for me, Dan, I should not be rooting for the aliens to kill the main characters, but there I was. And I was,
I enjoyed that film, I sort of was as well.
I was going like, I hope Jodie is the only survivor. Now, here's my thing on this. Had Jodie interpreted the Doctor the way she did that nurse in that movie, do you think
she's very relatable in that film, wasn't she?
Where was it in Doctor Who?
I don't know. Still lost in transmission somewhere.
But you get it. I told people, I said, Jodie had an example in that movie, and it never came on Doctor Who. We got this. What was the thing that everybody criticized? First of all, Jodie confessed that she never watched Classic Who, never watched anything before her. I don't think that's, which is fine, because if you're taking over something, you should know what came before you take it over. That was a creative chance that Chibnall was going to take him, but I knew Chibnall had no idea what he was doing when he said, I'm not going to have anything classic within the first season. That was a big mistake, because I said, if anything, whatever criticism you had of RTD and Moffat, they knew that they needed classic Whovians to come in and help. Because RTD had the chance to say, no, Christopher Eccleston's number 1. No, he said he was number 9. And he brought him in because you can bring in the Daleks with the Weeping Angels. You can bring in the Centaurans with the Vashta Nerada. You can bring in the Cybermen with the Weeping Angels, and mix it up, because these are the classic stuff that happened and that's how you get the fandom going. You get the classic and the new to work together and have some great stuff. When he decided to go completely, I'm not going to go classic writers, all that, I'm like, you really don't know where the ship's going, do you? You've already steered the Titanic, with that face, into it. The only reason why I liked him is because I love that YouTube video of him taking on John Nathan Turner and Pippin Jane Baker. So I thought, I think he gets it. I think he knows where this is going. But I've often questioned, what would the Chris Chibnall of then say to Chris Chibnall of now? What would he say into that? Would he be appreciative of what's going on? Would he be appreciative that the fans are kind of decisive, divided on this? Which I put fully on Chibnall. It's like you could have had...
Just leave Christian.
There had to be a shower scene in there. There had to be a shower scene in my episode out there. That's great. There was just so many missed things. Jodie, and the one thing I took Jodie to task on was the I forgot what it was. It was one of the magazines. It starts with a V, and she did that Twitter thing where she read the bad tweet.
Yeah. That was the Stylist magazine.
It's Stylist. I thought lower of Jodie after that, because that maybe
I think she was certainly given some bad advice about whether to do
Yes.
that or not.
because this is, people who were supporting go, yes, Queen.
I've tried to be generous about that because it was a long time ago. But when you watch it back, it does look bad. It actually looks worse with time.
There's no generosity to that because she's attacking the fans. And that's where I draw the line. I don't care if somebody walks up to you. When I used to work in the theme parks, if somebody came off a ride and they came up to me and said, this is the worst piece of crap I've ever been on. You are disgusting. I hate this place. I really, your place sucks and I'm leaving. So there's one or two things that was the proper way to handle this. You either could just apologize and let it go. You could either apologize and say, what can I do to make things better? But now this third option of I can pick up a stone and hit that guest with them is now the option that everybody's elected to. Capaldi had fangirl pullout, because we didn't have the younger doctor anymore, even though we were going back to what was classically what was happening before everything is, because the girls didn't have that boyfriend anymore. They didn't have David Tennant. They didn't have Matt Smith, and even Christopher Eccleston could be pulled into that. They had the father figure, which we were getting back to, and the younger women were going like, he's wrinkly. I remember seeing the YouTube videos, people sending me stuff. But nobody, he never went out and said, oh, you girls go, whatever yourself. He was classy, and he was trying to advocate for the fans that had left. Come on back, try me out. And that, I think, was what the first episode that he had was Deep Breath at the very end, when he was telling, I everybody debates me on this, and you can take me to task, Dan, if you think I'm wrong. That scene where 12 tells him, just see me as I am. I'm the doctor.
A lot of people speak about that scene. Somebody mentioned it to me just 2 days ago that it had really stuck with them.
Right. It was the way it was to me what Moffat was saying to the fangirls. Listen, he's still the same guy. He just, he's a little older. And I do know that some of those fangirls actually have the hots for Capaldi. So just like, I heard them just like, they actually like Capaldi, for the better term, the man meat, over Christopher Eccleston, over David Tennant. Okay, that's your call. But I'm just like, yeah, I think he's a handsome guy, but okay, whatever, your thing. But he didn't criticize the fans, and nobody did. They just basically said, hey, give this guy a chance. And it was the same thing when Jodie came in. I thought that I was giving that you'd given that discussion, and I wanted to give her a chance. I wanted to give Chris Chibnall a chance, first female doctor. That was my concern of all things. I said, listen, on top of everything, this is an alien. It doesn't matter if he's walking around with a schlong or if he's got memories. We have to focus that this is an alien. And you could say your little things about being female, it's just like, oh, look, I got etheric beam locators. Oh, yes, I did do the Dimensions of Time thing. Or a Curse of Fatal Death. But if you focus it on 2 minutes, then I'm not going to be anywhere near it, because I'm not going to appreciate it. The scene was mentioned when I was going back into the Witchfinders, a scene where 13 says, if I was a man, this would be a lot easier, or something to that effect. I don't remember the line, and I need to watch it again. They were alluding to that.
Yeah, I remember.
Her gender was a problem the whole time. And I said, whoever wrote this, either A, is dumb, B, ignorant, C, all the above. Your whole MO, Doctor Who, is that you've been walking into a room. Give me an inflate me here, because I want to talk to Chris Chibnall.
Give me an inflate.
Inflate me.
Go for it. Here's your close-up. Go for it. Go on. Hit it right between the eyes. Go and get him. Go and get him.
Your whole purpose since the day you walked into the TARDIS and walked out of it for the very first time and ended up in that dump yard over by the Foreman dump yard, every single episode, even to today, has been, you go into a location, you see something wrong, the bad guys go, no, we're going to stop you and kill you, and you have to fight the bad guys. Every time you try to correct something, that has been your OMO from day one. This is not something new for 13 in the middle of her run in her in season 11. This has been Doctor Who. The Doctor walks in, says, no, this is wrong. As a bloke, as a guy who's got a wang, and the bad guy goes, no. So whoever wrote that, I have no sympathy for you. Go, please. Whatever writers you have, RTD, go take them into a room, show them some classic Who, lock them up, I don't care, and show them what the best of what they've got right now. That is the truth. And plus, I'll throw this in. Hey, Dave. Hey, Dan. Do you remember an episode called The Demons? And one of the cliffhangers was John Pertwee. What were they going to do to him? Do you remember?
You'll have to remind me. You'll have to jog my memory.
They were going to burn him as a witch. It's not the first time she was going to be burned as a witch.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hey.
In defense of Joy Wilkinson, who I think is a mediocre writer at best, she had a yearning to tell a story about that particular time in history. And I do understand that. And apparently it's something that she knows a lot about, and she studied it, the actual real history of it. But I think that led her down, not a blind alley, but I think her keenness to tell that story, coupled with her own ideology, her own political bent, tainted what could have, that was quite a promising episode, I felt, out of the, and series 11 is very, very slim pickings, but that is one that stood out as could have been something. And I think this because there was all these things that were fighting their way under the duvet of that script. Mm-hmm. And she was indulging it all rather than thinking about the shape of the actual story and the truth of that it was meant to be the same character, just as you'd said. And Joy isn't that an experienced writer, and so you have to wonder, not to let her off the hook completely, who was the script editor, who was the showrunner.
Right. And the thing is, she knows about that time frame in Salem very well. She doesn't know anything about the Doctor, and that's where I'm chastising her. Yeah. Because if she'd known the Doctor would never have said that line. It would have been somebody else. Now, I could appreciate if one of the girls said that, and that would have made complete sense. I would even back it up. But the Doctor saying it, no. That's one of many things, but that just happened to stick out in my mind over and over again. Just like Orphan 55, I was like,
"Oh, I'd forgotten about it." You're absolutely right.
I'm Christian, like, what the hell,
Christian? You've been an excellent guest, sir. Excellent.
Give me an upgrade.
But that is the old girl starting up and calling time on another edition of Type 40. I know. I'll be back with another one fairly soon. Look out for that wherever you found this. It could have been on the dedicated home feed for Type 40, type40.podbean.com. Maybe we rolled up in front of your very eyes on the podcatcher of your choice. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart Radio, TuneIn, Google Play, Podbay. We're on pretty much all of them. You can find us here, of course, you can on YouTube, the world's largest streaming platform, here on the Spacebook channel. Plus, we're still on the fabulous Fandom Podcast Network's own master feed, loaded with all those other treats for your ears pretty much daily. Please consider a sideways trip over to the Fandom Podcast Network for all those quality shows that Kevin was telling you about earlier on. Maybe you'd like to have your say about all of this, about our discussion or anything else, all these fabulous ideas that Christian's talked about here, all these brilliant quotes and scenes that he's jogged certainly my memory about. Get in touch. Let us know what you think in the comments section or through our social media, Instagram and Twitter at Type40Doctor or email us at type40doctorwho@gmail.com. And if you're feeling really, really brave, this is where you've got to brace them for it, Christian. Head over to Facebook and join us in the Type 40 Facebook group. That's been going around 6 years now, and it's still full of generations upon regenerations of Doctor Who fans sharing both the classic and the new and speculating about the all new, about what could be to come in the not too distant future, swapping all those theories and whatever over in the Type 40 Facebook group. Okay, Christian, where can people catch up with you? Where can they hear you? Where can they see you and connect with you?
Well, first of all, everybody, while you're on here, please subscribe to Dan. to Dan, make sure that the Spacebook is getting some love. Get him to the first 1,000. Let's get him monetized. Let's get him going. Please share, like, and subscribe, and share all these episodes. If you love what we do here, please let the Spacebook know. Let the Mega Geek know. Let Charlotte know. Let Simon and JT and all the teammates over there. Yeah, much love to the Spacebook because as much as we are competitors of ourselves, we also support ourselves. Like I said, I don't mind mentioning the rabbi, Noel, and everybody else out there. So
The
please,
rabbi's my very favorite YouTuber.
yes.
And
If
he
I
knows it.
as long as I could turn down the volume, I did an episode with him. He did all the talking, and just like I'm sitting there going like, okay, I don't know why I came on. You have to stop. You have to stop him every once in a while, or else he'll just run off. But you can find me on Facebook. We are now at 57,000 followers. It is facebook.com, The Traveling TARDIS. Where we need our best help is youtube.com, The Legend of the Traveling TARDIS, where you can see all of our episodes. And we are struggling to get to 2,000, but with your help, we can get there. And our goal, we're actually trying to beat another podcast. We're getting up there, Dan, to another podcast that's been around forever. The show rhymes with Radio Free Scarra. But we're closing in on them.
I know those guys.
I know those guys. I mean, like, support everybody, listen to everybody, please, because opinions matter. And one thing I just want to make sure I didn't get a chance to when we started the Traveling TARDIS, even though the Facebook page has been around for 10 years, I think we're only on our 3rd year for podcasting. The reason why, when people are asking, one of the biggest questions about that, there's a billion Doctor Who podcasts out there. Why you? Why should we listen to you? And that's the hardest question every podcaster. Dan,
reasonable question.
It's a reasonable question. Why should we listen to you? And I relate to this one story, and this is why everything, and this is why I think this is a very important message. I'll make it quick. When I was at one of the panels, this was before Jodie Whittaker was to be the Doctor. I was at a panel in South Florida, and I was hosting it, and we were talking about Jodie Whittaker, our expectations of them. There were 2 women in the back of the panel who said absolutely nothing, did nothing. And they waited until the end of the panel for everybody to leave. They came up to me specifically, and they go, "We want to talk to you." I'm like, "Oh,
what have I done? How much tax do I owe?
Exactly.
Are you my ex-wife?"
Yes, exactly. They go, "We trust you. We didn't say," because I was having people raise hands. "Oh, do you like Jodie? Yes. If you don't like Jodie, no. If you are on the edge, raise your hand." They said they were going to raise their hand because they didn't like the idea of Jodie. When I go to panels and stuff like that, and I'm telling the story because I'm bringing back that kid who put away that Doctor Who costume in the closet. I love bringing in new people into my world of Doctor Who because this is what I love, and I can share it now years later. It's probably one of the only shows that can do that these days, that have started from its origins from the very beginning and have continued on. But these 2 women were upset. I think this was around 2016. And they said, "We want to talk to you. We're not appreciative of it. And we don't like the idea of a female doctor. We don't want to say it because we were afraid that everybody would get to us." And I'm like, this is not acceptable. People should be able to say their opinions, no matter if you agree with them, if you disagree with them, their opinions. And that should be the way it is. We're all fans, all love. Dan may say something. I may say something. We may totally disagree. But the fact is, after we're all done and we say it on the panel, we should be able to
That's how fandom always used to be. Yeah.
Right. And we should be able to walk out to the pub next door, buy each other a beer, and appreciate that we're still fans, but we support something very wonderful. That should be across things, politics, well, you name it. This should be the way. Go figure. And that was the basis of why I started the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS. And it's been a hard tightrope to walk, Dan, because I've had people on the show. And we actually have somebody who is an admitted SJW and said, if I'm going to run a show that expresses all opinions, I have to be able to sit there and just say, okay, your opinion sucks, but I appreciate it. Or, not be the only one to have an opinion. And that was the hardest thing I've started. And still to this day, something I fight with, because now I'm beginning to see that people don't appreciate my opinions and I have to kind of fight back. And that's not necessarily on the show. That maybe it's online or just people I've met, but that should be not only a lesson for geekdom, it should be a lesson about life. Remember, we go to the conventions because we want to share our geekdom. We don't go in there to exploit or
we're not the way I look at it, we're not going to church.
Exactly.
We're not all sitting and praying to something, to the same deity. We're going there to connect with people and to exchange experiences and ideas and the things that have moved us for better or for worse. And there is no hard and fast. I mean, I disagree with people who say there's no canon. There absolutely is a Doctor Who canon. Don't be stupid. But there is there's no right or wrong way to take any of it at all. And that's why I'm sure you the team would go out of our way to say, if you are enjoying the current era, or the era that's just wrapped up, is wrapping up, then of course we would never, none of us, I mean, I don't know about yourself, Christian, we haven't really spoken about this until this afternoon, but I would imagine you feel the same way as I do. None of us would wish to take that away from anybody out there who has enjoyed it. In fact, I'm quite pleased for them. I remember how that felt. Mm-hmm. I felt that way for a very, 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 very long time. But all we expect is mutual respect, that two-way street.
True. I mean, I actually had the most bitter debate that I had was actually online. There was a woman, won't say her name, but she is an author, and she challenged me about, aren't you glad that there are more women writing the series? And I'm just like, I thought this is, aren't you glad that there's a woman in the book? I said, I thought this was an alien. I thought gender had no influence on this. This is an alien. It shouldn't even matter if she's got boobs or if he's got a schlong out there. This is the alien. That's why I'm thinking that Whovians, or at least geekdom, or people in general, should be up to this to overlook that. And what I thought was funny is during this debate, there were 3 other people saying the exact same thing and parroting that. Yeah, this is an alien. It doesn't matter who's writing for her or who's in the role. And all 3 of those were women. Debating the other woman who said, we knew that she had an agenda, and agenda should not be the driving factor of anything. It should be story. And if you have an agenda, it should be written well, that it shouldn't even be influenced. The best sci-fi makes you think weeks later after that episode is aired. And for a brief moment, it didn't bash you over the head. It didn't berate you. It didn't make you feel like crap or being, berating you for whatever race you are. It just let you sit there and say, I'm going to show you both perspectives. And you decide what is wrong. I mean,
classic Doctor Who used to do that so beautifully. New Doctor Who used to. Russell can do that. Classic Doctor Who did that. Classic Star Trek was brilliant at it, better than probably anybody else.
There was something nobody caught that I just saw recently when I was watching The End of Time. A lot of people were, people who don't appreciate like the Democratic Party. When Obama came into play in that episode, people are like, "Oh my God, yeah, that's going to be, now it's woke, it's liberal." You didn't even catch what happened afterwards in the food truck area with the 2 people who were talking that the Master eventually kills. They were saying how they didn't think Obama was going to save them. Maybe nobody caught that, but it was in there. Meaning that there was no one-sided argument. There was actually another sided argument in that episode, if you looked very carefully, as opposed to arachnids in the UK. Or what I like to call Orange Man bad, and there's some spiders.
Christian, you've certainly got back at me for my long intro with this, the longest
I'm sorry.
contact section
We're podcasters, dude.
We've ever had. But no, beautifully phrased, as always. You've been delightful company. You always are. But you can check out Christian over on Facebook, on YouTube, all over social media. Legend of the Travelling TARDIS. He is materializing everywhere, and you can catch up with me on Twitter and Instagram as the Spacebook, where I am posting, ranting and raving and geeking out about all things sci-fi and fantasy and comedy and pop culture inside and outside of the TARDIS. Thanks again, mate. It's been a blast, and thanks as always to you for listening and for watching. We always have the time if you have the space here at Type 40, but that is it for now. We'll catch up with you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.